basics of Nearpod. It is one of my absolute favorite tools, and the reason is because it just makes life so much easier for the teacher. It's one of those tools that where you learn it one time and you can quickly and easily pull content. So if something's not going great during a lesson, you can always grab a Nearpod that's already been created or launch something in real time really quickly. So this is going to be pretty much all demonstration because it is a basic session and I want to try to fit everything I can into it so that you can start working with Nearpod tomorrow, as soon as tomorrow. We do have a Q&A at the bottom. If this is your first webinar, you might not have seen that option before. This is a great way to launch a question. So if you do have a question, ask it there rather than the chat because our panelist can answer it for you immediately. So let's get started. I will say webinars are kind of interesting because it's very quiet on the host end. So this is unique. It's hard to feed off the audience, so bear with me. All right, so go ahead and go, let me share my screen. I'm going to go ahead and go over to Nearpod itself. But before I do, oops, let me adjust something really quickly. All right, 1 second. So there is an option on share screen in Zoom where you can share only a portion of your screen. The only issue is it gets stuck and you have to adjust it. So I'm going to fix that right now and hopefully it will be exactly where I need it to be the entire presentation. If you've never noticed that before on Zoom, when you share your screen, there's a little advanced tab. So can my panelists give me a thumbs up if you're seeing the lovely digital learning coaches page right now? Any luck? Good deal. Okay. Brief moment of panic, but we're back in business. So before we get started, I just want to remind you that you can find your digital learning coach probably all over your campus, but also on the Lamar CISD webpage. So make sure that you reach out to them after this training so that you can do all things Nearpod. Now, to launch Nearpod, you have two options. You can either go to nearpod.com or you can go into ClassLink and launch the Nearpod SSO. And SSO stands for single sign-on, but one catch is that you will need to sign on through Office 365. So it's a little red link. And we are dealing with some slow computer issues.
It's coming.
It is.
My magic.
We were doing so well too. Okay, here it comes. Now, I was already signed in earlier, but if you are not, you're going to need to choose Office 365 and sign in with your LCISD email and password, and that way you can access all of the wonderful district options, and you won't be in that free version of Nearpod. So you'll have the district library, the school library. You won't have this managed district because that's on my end, but you will have, all of the fun tools that you don't get with the free version of Nearpod. So hey, let's talk about.
Can I interrupt you really quick? I just want to point out that the pro accounts are new for this year for our elementary teachers and for our high school teachers. Our middle school teachers have had it, but if you had explored Nearpod before this year, you should have more features. So it's really important to make sure that you're going through that link that Jess just told you about.
Yeah, especially when we start building content. There's some great tools with the free version. Don't get me wrong. But there's just so much more with this account. So that's why it's so important to navigate in or launch in through Office 365. And I just make it a practice to always sign into Office 365 every day. It makes everything run a lot smoother because there are so many integrations. All right, so to start off today, I just kind of want to talk about what Nearpod is. A lot of teachers have shared with me, oh, it's just a PowerPoint presentation. And yes, it does have presentation features. But one of the coolest parts of Nearpod is that it has the ability to interact in the middle of a lesson. If I want to quickly launch a lesson, I can use this button at the upper right to ask my class an open-ended response, a draw it, which we'll talk about later. I have a built-in timer, and then a collaborate board, a lot like Padlet. So we're going to dip into those later. But I want you to know that you don't necessarily have to have something created to use it immediately. You also can, like I said, can create presentation styles, kind of that same sort of slideshow. But imagine a slideshow where in the middle, you can quickly get ask a quiz question or an open-ended question, and then you can gather reporting information here and in a multiple other places, including Canvas. So it's so much more than that. Also, as part of the new updates, there are videos as well. Much like Canvas Studio, if you've used that, you can create videos with questions as students are watching the video. So really, I could spend a full day talking about all the options, but we have a short amount of time, so I am going to press on straight through it, and we'll get into all of the meat of everything as we go. But I do want to start off with the general settings, and that once you change these, you can leave them. You can always go back and edit them, but these will not affect previously launched content. So if you have a Nearpod in Canvas already, these changes will not apply there. So if you opened that Nearpod in a separate tab, go ahead and click on your profile avatar. It might be a gray avatar for you, but you can upload a picture if you like. We're going to go to lesson settings though. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a look at some of these lesson settings, and I'm going to make some recommendations. Ultimately, it's your choice based on the needs of your students, and it's going to differ based on the age level as well. But I just want to tell you what each one is so that you know what you're dealing with. All right, the first one, enable student names to autofill. I like to leave this one off, and here's why. Of course, we want students to sign in, just like we would want them to sign into Canvas. However, in the case of Nearpod, you're already going to embed it in Canvas. So there's not the issue of students accessing it or placing it on the web like we would in Zoom. And I think it's just an extra step. It's going to require students to log in through Office 365 if this is on. With it toggled off, they can go directly into the lesson and type their name. And that's not an issue either, because instantly I know what you're thinking. They're going to type a crazy name because there's always one. Or two if you're lucky, but it doesn't matter because they'll be signed into Canvas and you can see exactly who that student is. So it's just an unnecessary extra step, and I recommend that you leave that off. Immersive Reader is amazing. If you don't know, it's a Microsoft tool that will read aloud any text for students, and it does a lot more. I'm going to show you shortly. It will offer a picture dictionary, not Pictionary, picture dictionary actually, and it will read words in 60 different languages. Lots of fun stuff for our students that need those supports. So I'll make sure to show you that shortly. I recommend leaving that on. A lot of teachers across campuses are using this immersive reader built into Nearpod for their oral administration. The reason for that is you can share a Nearpod code with only those students. And so it works really nicely. They just message that through Canvas and say, if you need this quiz read to you, here it is. And then students can use those supports, both English learners and students that need the accommodation. Student Notes is one that I would leave on too. It allows students while they're in the Nearpod to type notes at the same time, and they can send those notes to you as part of an assignment, or they can just keep them for their records. I don't see any reason why we would turn that off, so I recommend leaving that on. All right, be sure that if you have a question that you type it into the Q&A box so that we can help you out right away. All right, show quiz and multiple choice questions results in student pace mode. So that's a good opportunity for me to tell you that there are 3 ways you can show a Nearpod to your class. One is student paced, where you give them the code and they go through at their own pace, exactly like it sounds. One is in front of the class. That's where you are projecting basically like a PowerPoint, but they can still interact with that PowerPoint or slideshow presentation. It just doesn't show results because we don't want students to see other students' grades. And then there is a live session. Typically, a teacher would have a cell phone or another device that they're driving the presentation. That way they can see those scores in real time. I can see student answers. I can see student drawings. What's cool about the live presentation is that I can actually launch out to the class an example drawing or an answer that a student answered really well, and it does not share their name. So we'll talk more about that shortly. I would say use your best judgment. Do you want them to see their results or not? So this is going to be a you decide option. All right. Another one allows students to resubmit answers in live participation mode. Again, that's going to be your choice based on the needs of that lesson. You can click this link to learn more about that, but it's mainly, do you want to give them one chance, several chances? Do you want them to be able to change their answers based on the conversation that you have in class? So that's going to depend on your needs. Collaborate board is a lot like a Padlet. Students can add content to it. It can be lesson-based. You can also launch the collaboration board live. It does not have to be a part of a presentation. And you can either leave this on, or if you don't feel safe with students posting their responses, you can turn that off. But there is the ability to moderate the board. So if you leave it on, you can always approve those comments before they're posted. And last but not least, this one is a crowd favorite. Require student submissions. And what that does, as students are clicking through the Nearpod, or as you are clicking through the Nearpod, if this is turned off, they can skip questions, they can skip those interactive opportunities, and then they have clicked all the way through a Nearpod and you have no data. So I would leave that on, because what happens is, let's say they try to click through a quiz question, it says, oops, you can't proceed, and they have to go back and do that question. So that's actually a new feature that I'm excited about, because that was a problem before. We wanted to make sure we were getting that data. So you can just go ahead and turn that on. So those are the settings, the global settings for Nearpod. I know we don't know a lot about Nearpod yet, but I wanted to pause for questions just to see if there were any specific to these lesson settings. All right.
There is a question, Jessica, in the chat. When you use Nearpod and Canvas as an external tool, will the collaborative function work?
I am
They're
so
not using a lesson code.
Is that's Mr. Hayner?
It is.
Absolutely. So I'm going to show you shortly how to add a student-paced Nearpod. They will not need a code. All they will do is type in their name and immediately begin interacting with the Nearpod. And the neatest part about it is you can use SpeedGrader to grade those, and it will give a report for each time a student interacts with that Nearpod. It will give a brand new report. So they could actually do half of the Nearpod, turn off their computer, go home, launch it again, and do the second half, and you'll get all of that data. So what I like about it is you can take a longer Nearpod lesson and stretch it over several days, so that they're doing, they're chunking the lesson. It's a little bit more digestible, because some of the ones in the Nearpod library that we'll see shortly are pretty long. Okay, other questions? Good question. They're like, we want to see how it integrates with Canvas. I know that's the most popular part. So this is a great opportunity for me to show you the Nearpod trick. And you'll notice there's no breadcrumb trail. I don't want to use my back button. If you ever get lost in Nearpod or stuck, you can always click on the words Nearpod, and that will take you back to your library. Okay. Are we ready to start learning how Nearpod functions, how we can find Nearpods? So it's, Patricia says, today it said my students had reached the max number. I haven't seen that before. That's probably an isolated incident that we might need to get a coach to look at, or I might need to look at the actual assignment. At the end of this, you can send that assignment link and we can investigate.
Also need to make sure that she's using her account that's with the district. If her email had changed or she'd set up another account previous to this, it could be causing a problem with her getting the pro account license. So I would suggest, Ms. Daniels, reach out to your digital learning coach and just say that you are, you may have problems with your kids reaching the max number for the code in Nearpod, and ask to check your account. That would probably be the best way to go about it.
And do you mean max number of videos or max number of Nearpod lessons? Now I know that there is some question on the max number of students. Okay. We had some question earlier about the vocabulary.
I'm going to dig a little bit, see if I can find something here.
Thank you, because that's actually a question I don't know the answer to, but we can find the answer and we'll make sure that you get that, Ms. Daniels. All right. So let's talk about Nearpod. Again, like I said, in a typical session, I would launch a Nearpod and have you participate with it. Since this is a webinar, it doesn't work the same way. You kind of don't know how many people to expect, but we'll see what we can come up with as we go. All right, so I am in my Nearpod library. If you have never used Nearpod before, yours is probably blank. But as you add Nearpods to your library, you'll get these course shells. They kind of look like the course shells in Canvas. And some of these are Nearpods that I've created. Some are Nearpods that I borrowed from the library. You'll also notice that there is a new Explore the Nearpod Library button. So there are a few different ways to search the Nearpod library. With this button, you can search your library here. That's all of the content in your library. You can search the Nearpod library on the left-hand navigation here. So Nearpod's one of those tools where there's a few different ways to do the same thing. It makes it pretty user-friendly, so I like that a lot. One thing that's new as of March is the folder structure within Nearpod. You can create folders within folders within folders, and it really helps organize. I've seen teachers create TEACS folders. They have a different color for each strand, and that helps them keep their lessons organized. All you have to do to create a folder is just like it says, add a folder, give it a name. This is going to be my favorite folder. And then that folder is ready to go. I can click on the folder to give it a folder color. I can add lessons directly from here. If I'm not ready to add lessons though, that's okay, it can stay empty. Here it is right here. Okay, so there's 0 Nearpods. You can see in English Language Arts, I have 19, Science 37. Sorry, Math, I need to add more because I need to learn more, but I don't have very many there. Okay, so that's the folder structure. Let's take a look at a lesson. Actually, we're gonna start by exploring the library. I think that's gonna be the most, where we get the most bang for our buck with Nearpod basics. So if you have ever fallen ill a few hours before you have to be in and you have to write those sub plans, it is such a headache. There's just so much to write and send. I want to recommend thinking about Nearpod as part of your sub plans, especially if you have technology. If you have virtual learners, this is just such a great tool to get that content immediately. So I'm going to click the Nearpod library. I'm going to pretend like I am going to be ill and I need some content. I had a really great hands-on lesson for class and I just need something now that's going to be engaging and a great lesson for my students. When I click on the Nearpod library, immediately I have access to current event categories. So that's what you'll see populating here. Obviously, the election is an important current event, so there's lots of content there. Our students are not going to see this dashboard. That's just something to consider. You can also see lessons by publisher. And what's cool about that is there are some great publishers. LearnZillion has amazing content. So Common Sense is really awesome. All of these are great. My ELA teachers, News ELA is there. So if you want to search by publisher and you just know that that's what you like to use typically, then searching by publisher is really great. And of course, we've got a few other options here. Here were the videos that I was speaking about. So all of these are videos with questions embedded. There might be a few moments where we have to wait patiently for my computer.
Hey, Jesse, while you're waiting, I was going to remind you, some of the content that shows up on that initial dashboard on the lessons when you first click on Nearpod library, like you said, they are topical, but I think you were pointing out that your students won't see those. So if you have younger students, you don't have to worry that they're going to see the older content. It's just for the teachers.
Absolutely. And that's important to note because the dashboard isn't age grouped. So, okay, so these videos loaded. I clicked on ELA, so there's lots. Understand pronouns, paragraph form, reading informational text. A lot of these are those lessons that are hard to come up with or take really, really tedious in the lesson creation. So I love that it's done for you. Again, these are videos. It's going to be the same sort of setup for presentations. So notice when I clicked on videos, it automatically checked videos. I can check lessons as well. And now it's going to pull all of English language arts, all the way from kinder through 12th grade. Why are Mondays so hard? I'm actually pretty intrigued. I want to know what that's about. But let's say it's just a little bit too much and you want to narrow down the search. It's pretty easy. On the left-hand side, you have lots of options. You've got your subject options. You've got grade level options. There's some new changes as far as strands. So I do want to give a disclaimer here. The further you drill down, the less options you're going to have. And I wouldn't rule out all of the content just because it's not aligned to a Texas TEKS. So sometimes it's nice to start by looking at everything and then sort of narrowing it down from there. But I am going to choose Texas and I'm going to choose math because I picked on them a little bit earlier. Now I can say, let's do 3rd grade. And a new addition is that the strands are actually available. High five to every teacher that has those memorized. I was always so bad about having them memorized, and I will admit that. I feel like this is a safe space to do that. But if you don't have them memorized, you can go ahead and click directly on. So let's look at represent 1 and 2-step problems. I think it said to 1,000. And now we've got a bank of all sorts of resources. Okay, now it's going to be hit or miss. You kind of have to look at them and decide which one you want. And I will say, you'll get caught looking at a lot of different content because it's all so great. I spoke on LearnZillion earlier, so I'm going to click on that. Identify addition and subtractions patterns using a hundreds chart. Let's see what kind of content is available there. So I'm going to preview. It's pretty easy. Just sort of follow the steps. The cool thing about Nearpod is it is what it says. If you want to preview, the button says preview. On the left-hand side, it will list every TEK associated with, or I should say TEKs. I guess the singular of TEKs is TEKs. But even though we only chose 3.5a, if it was another lesson that had some associated TEKs with it, they would be listed here as well. So I can preview this. Let's see if it's content that we like. So we've got an objective. Immediately, we've got a video for students to watch. And keep in mind, I can share this in real time with my students and paste them through it, or I can do this student paste. I have that option. So this is an example of an open-ended response that they used for math. How do you know if 24, 34, and 54 are in the same pattern? And there's a resource attached, that hundreds chart. Okay. So here's a bit of a review space. And so if you're doing this in front of the class, this is a great time to really talk to them about it. Okay, I'm trying to see if there's a draw it in this particular lesson, which is my favorite. But let's say you go through this and you really, really like it. It's an awesome lesson. All you have to do is add to your library and it's there. And you can add as many as you want. Okay, once it's in your library, it's super easy to add to Canvas. And so we'll show that soon enough. All right, so I'm pretty sure some of you remember the magic trick to get back to your library, but if you don't remember, just click on your Nearpod button at the top. And now I'm back in my library. And here is that lesson. All right, so the way, if I'm not going to integrate this into Canvas, if I want to do a live participation, I just click live participation and it is going to give me a code. That is the code that students will use to join. So they do not need to sign in. They'll just go to nearpod.com or nearpod.com/students and type in this code and then they'll be ready to go. Of course, you can share it out through social media, through a link, and there are some other options, including Google Classroom, Remind, and Teams. Okay, And let me get back. I'm going to end this session. All right. Now, if I had any of you join that, I would already have a report created for me. I don't have to save any answers. I don't have to snip anything. I don't have to download anything. My reports have everything that I need, so I can really teach in the moment and not worry about, okay, I need to go back to little Timmy and bring him into my small group. Let me write that on a sticky note. You can look later. And so the reports are a beautiful thing. So we'll save that towards the end of this presentation. But I just wanted you to know that while you're Nearpodding, you don't have to think about anything else except for having fun teaching your students. Student pace, same situation. You just click this link and that gives them the option where you as the teacher are not clicking through for them. Nearpod was originally created as a tool where students had iPads or devices and teachers would click through the presentation so that they weren't off looking at lots of different things. So that was the concept in the beginning of Nearpod several years ago. All right. So we have looked at how we can change our lesson settings, how we can quickly launch something. More on that shortly. We have searched the Nearpod library, including how to find specific TEKS-aligned lessons, and we have talked about the folder structure. Before we go into how we can create content or create original Nearpods, are there any questions that I can answer?
Well, I think I found the answer for Patricia, but it might relate to a lot of the teachers here. So she was saying that they were reaching a student max limit. So I found contradicting things online, but one says 100, one says 150, that you can have up to 100 or 150 students in a session at once. So if Patricia, if you would be teaching 4 sections, 5 sections, 6 sections of science, and if you're trying to use the same Nearpod lesson, I think if those students are not leaving the lesson, and if you're not ending the session, it's going to keep counting those other kids as being there. So I'm wondering if that's the problem. Like if you would just end the session and start it again, then maybe you would be able to just get the kids that are in your classroom currently at doing that. I hope that makes sense.
Okay.
Hey, Jesse, what if I found a lesson in the Nearpod library and I like most of it, but there's some parts I would like to change? What could we do?
Okay, so once it's in your library, all you need to do is choose this edit button, and that's a really good question. And depending on the type of lesson it is, there's more ability to edit. Sometimes you can't edit specific slides just because it's, if it's a Learn Zillion, it's a copyright thing, but you can sandwich information between slides. Are you able to see my screen right now? I'm getting a funny look from it. Okay.
Yes.
Everything's doing weird things. It won't let me take the screen off of the select screen.
It looks like your screen might be frozen though. It looks like your screen might be frozen. Can you, because your mouse is not moving, and we didn't see where you said go on the edit thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
let me go ahead. How about now? There we go.
There it is. Yep.
Can we see it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I hovered over the slide right where preview was, and the edit button is right next to preview. So all you have to do, I'll show you that again when I back out of this. But once I'm in edit, I have this is what I meant by that PowerPoint-y look, where each slide is now on a different tile. And I can add a slide. I don't want to go into that yet because I'm about to with creation, but I can add different slides here. I can also drag and rearrange, or I can delete. So if I have lots and lots of content and I don't want to keep everything, I can edit this pretty easily. Okay, that was a good question. All right, so let's go into content creation. I'm so excited about this because this Nearpod solves so many issues with engaging lessons for students. I've had lots and lots of teachers come and say, I've been rocking and rolling at virtual, but I just need something that's a little bit more fun or hands-on, and this tool is going to be your best friend. So I am ready to create a lesson. I don't want to use one from the Nearpod library. I've got a great PowerPoint or Google Slides presentation, and I just want to use it for a Nearpod. So what I'm going to do is click Create, And I have some options here. I can create lessons. That's my slideshow, or videos. That's my video with questions. So I'm going to add a lesson, and it's going to give me a blank space to begin content creation. We're about halfway through. I wish this webinar was longer because I could go into detail forever, but I'll do the best I can to show you everything. You're definitely going to want to play if you haven't used this before. So here's what a blank lesson looks like. If you see here, I can drag and drop PowerPoints, PDFs, PNG images. PowerPoint is my favorite because if you drag a PowerPoint presentation over, it's going to give you an individual slide for each, or an individual tile, I should say, for each PowerPoint slide. So that's where you can take your old PowerPoint that you've been using for years and you can make it interactive by sandwiching in between those interactive elements. I don't have one handy, so I'm just going to start from scratch. And I am going to make a presentation all about Tuesdays because that's where we're at. It's pretty easy. Add slide. The add slide button means add slide. You can't get any easier than that. And here's where we'll start to talk about all of the different things you can add. And there's a lot here. There's 2 different tabs. There is content and there are activities. So these are your interactives. Okay. So we'll start with content. I'm going to start talking about these and adding them. And when the presentation is complete, I'll show you what they look like through preview. Video is that bank of videos that we looked at before that are already created. In fact, I hope it doesn't go too slow, but I'll go ahead and click on it for you so that you can see. That way, if you want one of those videos, you can make it a part of a presentation. So it doesn't have to be a standalone lesson. You can add one of the videos from the library. But if you notice, you can also add YouTube. I have not tested this within the district, so I might see if one of my panelists can test that and make sure that it plays. I'm pretty sure it will. My videos, or you can upload a video. So sky's the limit. If you have a Zoom session that you recorded that you want your students to watch and then complete the interactives, I think that would be a great way to use this video. So let me go back. Okay, I could have just hit cancel at the bottom. I don't think it was showing though. So I'm going to go back into Tuesdays. This was that edit button I was speaking of earlier. And there we go. Cheryl, did you have a question? Go ahead and type it into the question box or into the chat so that we can help you out with that. I saw your hand was raised. All right, so when I add slide, let's go through some of these options. Again, I wish I had more time to spend on each and every one, but we're stuck. So slide, exactly what it sounds like. It is a slide, looks a lot like a really simple PowerPoint slide. It's got some options popping up on the right here as far as theme. You can add text, video, an image, or a GIF. And that's just like you were building a slideshow. You can give it a background, a different layout, or some audio. You're going to notice as we go through this, there's lots of different spaces for you to add audio. And in my experience, students who are virtual especially love to hear your voice. So kind of a cool way if you're talking through it or you're not there with them so that you can give them your take on the lesson. All right, so that was, so far we've done videos and slide. Web content is it's just going to give you a place to put a link if you want them to go look at a separate resource somewhere. Vocabulary was recently purchased by the folks at Nearpod, so you'll see that popping up in some places. I'm told you're limited to 3 total videos, so I'm not sure it's completely useful at this point in time, but definitely check out the videos they have. The students love them. I would, if you have a vocabulary account, that should open up some extra options for you there. Nearpod 3D totally makes me geek out. It's the coolest thing ever. It's a 3-dimensional look at an object. So I know some of the teachers I'm working with are using the human body category. They were working on the endocrine system. And so I'll show you that shortly in the preview. It lets you really take a three-dimensional look at that human body. So hold that thought. I want to get a few more things in here before we pop over to preview. PhET simulations are one of my absolute favorites for every teacher, but also inclusion teachers. And the reason for that is it is hands-on simulations of math and science. So if you have a student that is struggling in the middle of class and they're not getting something, inclusion teachers don't typically carry around all of the scales and different things like that. So this gives you an option to be able to work with that child if you don't have that content. So let's say I'm working with an elementary student and we are talking about circuit construct. Well, here we go, color vision. I can add that simulation in and students in the Nearpod can work with that simulation just like they were working with tools in a lab or math manipulatives. So we'll look at that shortly as well. Nearpod Field Trip is very, very cool. Our children have been stuck at home for so long. The Nearpod Field Trip library has grown in size so much to the point where I had a PE teacher want to take students to a stadium, and there were lots of different options for that. It's going to take a second to load. It does this every time just because it is really dynamic. But I do want to say the field trips of the old Nearpod used to be that street level plane. Now we have 360-degree views of all sorts of different places. So really cool. I'm going to say let's go to the Beijing Olympic Stadium. I'm still feeling kind of sad that we didn't get the Olympics this year, but soon, we'll get it soon. So again, we'll preview that shortly. Graphing calculator is exactly what it is. If you've ever used Desmos before, it's pretty much every different kind of graphing calculator you can use. So that gives students, especially virtual learners who don't have that TI Inspire calculator, something useful for them to use. So if you use that, it will load up several different types of calculators, hopefully quickly. You'll notice that some, like the field trips and Desmos, take a little bit longer to load, especially if you are on a wireless network, but they do work nicely. They just have to pretend, close your eyes and pretend you're on dial-up. That's the way I always do. We'll be nostalgic. And I know somebody out there, probably Paul Wagner, is thinking of AOL right now. Okay. So I'm going to add another slide. BBC Worldwide, that's just a content collection, kind of like the publishers we spoke about earlier, where you had LearnZillion and all of those. BBC is one of those collections. They were just lucky enough to make it to the dashboard of the content collection because there's a lot. History teachers love this, but we'll press on because I think that you can just dip in there and look for those videos. Sway is one of my favorite Microsoft tools. If you have created a Sway, it looks a lot like a newsletter. But you can add that Sway in. It's really cool if students have created the Sway and you add it in as part of the lesson. So this will link up and allow you to do that. And there's also lots and lots of Sways already created there. So if you want a sort of newsletter feel where they can scroll through and find lots of data, Sway is going to be your tool. Slideshow is just like Slide, except for they don't leave that particular frame and they can scroll through each slide. And then, of course, audio and a PDF viewer. So that's the content. Let's look at some of the activities that you can do.
Hey, Jess, real quick, we had a couple of questions on the videos before we get into activities.
Okay.
We had some questions about if you have created a video within Canvas Studio, can you put that into your videos within Nearpod? And actually, Paul answered in there, if you can download the Canvas Studio video, yes, you can import that in there. That's that upload button, upload your videos. So you can import those videos. And I did check out your YouTube videos and they work great in there.
Absolutely. The only thing that we won't see is those Canvas Studio quiz questions, because that is a function of Canvas Studio itself. But it's so easy to quickly add those questions that I would strongly recommend downloading those and getting them into a Nearpod. The reason is Nearpod questions allow you to add an open-ended question to a video. That's not a feature in Canvas Studio. So that would be a good solution for those. All right, So we talked about content. Let's talk about these activities. I do want to show you a few of them, not all of them, because we are running out of time. I'm so sad. But I'll talk about them for just a little bit. I want to be able to show you the preview so you can see what those look like. That's the wow moment. A time to climb is basically a quiz that is turned into a game. So think Kahoot. You just add all of your quiz questions and they type in almost exactly like Canvas. And then students can play the game and compete, and there's a leaderboard and a winner who climbs to the top of the mountain and wins the award. Open-ended question is exactly what it sounds like. You're adding in an open-ended question. And we are waiting patiently for our dial-up connection. There we go. Okay, you enter your question here. You can give them a little bit of guidance with a video or a picture or some audio, and you can enable student audio recordings as well. So I'm going to cancel out of that because I don't think we need it. Maybe, maybe not. Of all the things we can control, we are most at the mercy of our internet connection, sadly. Okay. All right, so we looked at open-ended responses. Matching pairs is super neat. All you have to do is snip some pictures. I'm going to wait I'll show you a preview of one of those if there's time, but you add picture A and picture B together, and it gives you the option to have students match things up. Quiz, exactly what it sounds like. You add quiz questions, looks a lot like Canvas. You just plug in the answer choices. You can give feedback. I actually want to show you this one.
And while you're opening that one, with the matching pairs, Jess, I've also had teachers create like little images that are vocabulary. So they could type the definition onto a little thing and save it as an image, and then they could match that way as well. So you could have image to definition or word to definition.
Yes, as long as you can snip it, it can become an image and you can do that matching. I recently did a match your digital learning coach to the campuses that they go to, which was a lot tougher than I thought it would be, but it was really fun kind of playing with that. So really all you have to do is have the pictures saved to your desktop somewhere safe. And I usually title the pictures 1A and 1B. That way it's easy to quickly upload those. So this is what that quiz question dashboard looks like. I can add an answer, I can add a question and make it as long as I want. This does work with that immersive reader. So if you need audio or you need oral administration, it works very nicely with this as well.
I will say for your teachers with younger students that the time to climb is almost a very similar format. That still put your question in, give your two choices, and then it does the cute little icons and characters that your kids get to pick and answer the questions as they do that game.
It's really cute. A time to climb is cute. And I believe I saw an update that there's a Halloween themed one. So it might be a good thing to do this week. Flipgrid gives the option for that Flipgrid kind of recording style. We could go into a huge amount of detail on Flipgrid, but it's just an opportunity for students to record an answer, and you can collect that data. I want to save draw it because that's my favorite, but again, Collaborate board looks a lot like a Padlet where you're seeing all of the student responses in one place. Poll. I love poll because you can ask a question in real time and see how they feel. I thought it was great in the past when I had students and I said, what do you think our due date should be? Now I only gave them 3 choices. So really I was in charge of that, but they thought that they were picking their own due date. So that's kind of neat. Fill in the blanks is super cool and easy to create. I want to take a second to show you this because fill in the blank has been something that's so challenging to create in other tools. I'm going to go to another screen over here and I'm going to copy some text on moon phases. Let me open that up really quick.
I will tell you, fill in the blank has quickly become one of my favorite tools. It used to be Draw It, but the fill in the blank is now my favorite because you can, like Jess is doing right now, you can copy and paste just about anything in there. And it's so easy for your kids or for you to create that option for your students.
Absolutely. So I just went to my good friend Google and borrowed this. Be careful with that. Make sure it's not protected content, but and pasted it in. And now I can choose next. And it says click on the words that you want to be the blank. So I'm going to click on these words here. Any words that I think are important, obviously you'll spend a little bit more time. And now I have created a fill in the blank slide that when they are participating, they're dragging those words into the blanks. Super neat. Now I saved the best for last. Draw It is so cool. It is the best tool I have found as far as labeling or showing your work on a math problem. That's been an issue for us. We've been, investigating a lot of tools like Whiteboard FI and Jamboard and different things like that. But Nearpod collects the data for you. So again, you could gather 100 different Nearpod tiles and look at them later on. And of course, anything you want them to draw, including if you want them to label something, all you have to do is have an image. So I've seen teachers snip a page of a novel and students annotate that novel using the drawing tools. They get a little drawing toolbar at the bottom, and they can either draw or type text. I've seen teachers snip a worksheet. Careful of copyright with that, but and students can type in their answers, so that's been an issue too. So all you have to do to open up those drawing tools is create this Draw It slide, give them some instructions, and they're ready to go. So I am going to add that one. Draw a picture of your teacher. I don't recommend doing this one because again, there's always that one or two students. Okay, so I'm going to save that. All right, and it's really that easy. I'm done with my presentation. That took a little bit of time, but I went through almost every single option that was available. You're not going to have to add that many. You don't always have to create a presentation. Maybe you just need a Draw It slide or just need a 3D. I want to preview it with you so I can show you some of the things that I thought were really cool and stand out a little bit. But it's easy. It's easy to create content, grab it from the library, add a few options in so that you can get that student data and you're rocking and rolling. I mentioned earlier about sub plans. So this is draw a picture of your teacher. You can see their options. They can color, highlight, add text. They can add a background picture. And the cool thing is they can pull that from Google. So for the youngers that don't have access to a picture that they've saved, that's really great. Of course, they can browse their files. So lots and lots of options just with a Draw It slide. I started the preview behind. This, I believe, is this is how our fill in the blank looks. Okay. And one of these is going to be our field trip. Again, that takes a second to load. Here we go. It might be 3D. Okay. There we go. So now I can have a 360-degree look. It's a little slow just because we're zooming, so keep that in mind. But students on their own time can really look around this Olympic stadium, and it's super neat. I think it's a great solution for our kids who have been cooped up a little bit. I think this one coming up is going to be my PhET simulation, another one that takes some time to load, but I don't know what it does, but I guess if we mix certain kinds of light, it shows us what colors. Science teachers could probably chat in and help me out. I feel really foolish right now, but I think it looks smart.
It's really pretty.
So it's telling us what color light we see with those kind of filters. Is that right?
Sounds
Don't
good.
judge me. Okay. This was my endocrine system, I think we chose. It's loading up, but it's a three-dimensional look at those parts of the body. So you can talk about those with your students. There we go. Looks super sciencey. I'm just fascinated by this one. And you can drag and pull and see the backside and different parts of that. All of these were right there ready for us within the Nearpod creation platform. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to reserve that 10 minutes to show you how to add a Nearpod into Canvas. It's really, really easy, especially if you've already added something like Canvas Studio to a lesson. I'm going to stop sharing shortly so I can load up my Canvas account. And in the meantime, just go ahead and chat in any questions that you might have, and I'll be up and running shortly. Okay. As a matter of fact, I think I'm ready to go already.
Awesome. I know that Draw, it's been very important for, especially for our elementary teachers that are looking for ways to use their worksheets and activities that they've already had. So that's been a great tool for them.
Absolutely. That's my favorite. Draw It came with a free version. So if ever for a reason, you know, the district doesn't support Nearpod, I doubt that, that Draw It is always there, and that Nearpod library is always there. There's just a few functions. So don't abandon Nearpod. It's a tool that will stand the test of time for sure. Okay, so I've got a Nearpod assignment up and ready to go. It was a story that I needed students to read. I just want to show you, when you are ready and you have Nearpod in your library, the first time you ever use it with Canvas, you're going to have to find your Nearpod link. I don't think I have it in my navigation, but it should be there in your Skyward courses, and just sign in there. That will allow Nearpod to talk to your Nearpod library. But once you do that, should only be one time, you will create the assignment, and the submission type is going to be external tool. So really, you'll create the assignment exactly like you create any other assignment. Give it an assignment group of major and minor, just so that you can sync to SIS if you want to. And then submission type is external tool, and you just go in and find the proper Nearpod. So I'm going to scroll. It's not in alphabetical order, oddly, so don't think it's missing. It's there. Paul has made all the Nearpod magic happen for us, so that it's not too stressful. And right now it's connecting up to my Nearpod library, and you'll even see the Nearpods we just worked on. Just takes a second. So it is pulling in that entire Nearpod library. So then I would just select whatever Nearpod I want to add. I need to add it as student paste for Canvas. That's important. And then select. And then of course I can assign to everyone. If I need to add a student with extra time, I can do that here, and then just save. And it is ready to go. When you are ready to grade it, after you have given students the proper amount of time to access this Nearpod, you just go to SpeedGrader, and I want to find one with reports so you can see. Let's see. Somewhere in here, I did a 3D shapes lesson. Let's see how that looks. I want you to see one with actual reporting. All right, so it's popping up, but I'm just going to go straight to SpeedGrader and see which students have done what they're supposed to do and which have not. All right, so the report is loading. You'll notice that I have submission to view. Anytime a student has interacted with this, I will get a new report here. So even if I have an oops and I put the wrong lesson into that assignment bank, I can still change it, and the title of this report will be just whatever I change it to. So I can see that this student did something at 9:42 a.m. on October 13th, and then again at 9:48 on October 15th. I get to decide what grade goes in. So if I want them to do half now, half later, that's totally fine. I'm just going to look at the report, and I'm going to see, hey, this student, you didn't answer any of the quiz questions. You didn't answer any of my open-ended responses. Their actual answer will be right here. You do not have to leave and go to Nearpod to see this. You'll see it right there. I think I just clicked through this one. If they did a drawing, it will be right here. So you can grade just right here using the SpeedGrader, type it in, give them some feedback, and you're ready to click on to the next student and see how they did. So test student does not have a submission. Neither does Jane Devine. I see she left. She had to head out too, so we'll have a talk with her about that. But that's how easy it is to grade and add in, sync those grades to the grade book. You would just type that in. The reason it doesn't automatically populate a quiz grade or something of that nature into this space is because there's lots of different pieces of content with Nearpod. They want you to be able to look at the open-ended responses and look at all of that. So you will have to type in a score here, but you can easily ship that over with grade pass back and get it into Skyward in that way. So pretty neat.
Mr. Hayner shared, Jessica, I'm sorry, Mr. Hayner just shared a great tip. when you're setting up your assignment, choose to have it open in a new window or a new tab, because otherwise it can show up kind of small. Nearpod can, if you're in the same window as the assignment. So when you choose external tool and everything, underneath there it says open in a new tab. That would be a great thing to do so that it's full screen for the students.
Yeah, that's going to be really important, especially if you use that draw it feature, because you want to give them an adequate amount of space. They're on all different types of devices, and that can get kind of sketchy. So that's a great tip. You get the tip of the day. If I had some noisemakers, I would, but I'm out. It's late. There we go. Thanks, Tina. All right. Again, if you don't use these reports here, they are available in the Nearpod library. Let me see if I can find that. 1 second. And there we go. Hi. Let me show you that really quickly. Okay. So those reports that I mentioned, those exact same reports, if you never touch Canvas with this, which I strongly recommend having this in Canvas. It is your virtual and blended learning environment, so it's super important. But those reports also exist here. And this is a bank of every single report that you have used, or every session that you have launched. You can see I've launched a few, and it's going to tell me when I click on this. So this was one that I had some teammates work through. I can see that I had 8 students access it then. If you're doing the session live, it's going to give you every student on one report. But now you can see that my friends that did draw it, this was I gave them a maze to do. So I can see their draw it, and those pop out. She typed winner on hers. I knew Amanda would do it correctly. This was the matching pairs that I did. I can see who completed it and who didn't, and how well they did. Fill in the blanks. I just get lots and lots of information from these Nearpod reports. So again, it's one of those things that lets you do the fun part of your job, which is teaching kids in front of the classroom, not having to collect that data at this time, which is just such a challenge. And that's why I love Nearpod so much. So really that takes us to the end. So much content in such a short amount of time. We do have some Nearpod webinars coming up to dig deeper and look more and participate in some Nearpods coming up, probably looking at January for those. So that is all we have. Do you have anything to add, Paul or Tina?
I just put the link on for that they need to complete for the form to get your hour of DMA credit. There's a link in the chat. If you please click on it. It's a real difficult. Hopefully you can answer all the questions correctly. I think it asks for your campus and what day you attended. So it's Tuesday, by the way, in case you're not sure. But other than that, you did a great job, Jessica. You got it all.
Thank you. Thank you. And for those of you that have technology goals, I think this is a great one to share with your principal that you attended this after school training. I think they'd be delighted to hear that you hung out with us today. And I sure do appreciate your time. Again, webinars are strange. It's so quiet. I want to talk to you, but hopefully you were cheering in the background and had a great time.
And I just want to say, I hope we see you when we are able to do our sessions. I'm thinking we'll schedule in December and January for our follow-up sessions. On Nearpod, we have no meetings in November, which I hope that, you all get an extra time to rest on that one. And thanks for coming tonight. And if you have any questions, don't forget to ask your digital learning coach too. We love talking about Nearpod.
So Tara, if you were signed into Office 365 already, that's why it didn't ask for your name. It will give us your name automatically. We're just psychic.